Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of Beyond the Cage. I'm your host, Jim Graham, and joining me on the line today, we have a special guest. She is fresh off a victory over Anna Elmose at UFC Fight Night Belfast. She is Amanda Cooper. And Amanda, thanks for coming on Beyond the Cage.
Thank you for having me.
I want to go back a little bit, Amanda, here to your time on The Ultimate Fighter. Of course, that was a few months ago, and you were runner-up on season 23 of the show. Now that it's been a few months since you were in the house and all the taping and all that, what do you feel is the biggest thing you gained from that experience being there at the Tough Compound in Vegas for 6 weeks?
I gained a lot, just obviously as an athlete, but also as like a person, I realized how independent I can be when I need to, I rely a lot on my team and on my coaches, and being in the house, I had to be a lot more independent, and it gave me a lot of confidence, knowing that I can do it all by myself, and whether the pressure's there or the pressure's not there, I'm getting very confident in myself.
Now, of course, filming and what was actually shown on the season are usually two different things. How do you feel the season yourself was portrayed, and maybe some of the other either coaches or cast members when you actually sat down and watched the episodes?
I actually thought it was pretty, accurate. I know that Claudia and Joanna was like the biggest thing that I've had questions. People ask me questions about, was it real? Was it fake? It's definitely 100% real. They do not like each other, but um, they definitely made Joanna look a lot, more um, bitchier, than I think she is. She didn't show how down. She is very down to earth. She's funny. Um, she is an intense person, so they showed the intense side of her, but they didn't show any other side of her.
Now, when it actually came to the two coaches fighting inside the octagon at the finale, what did you think about that fight, and especially kind of the comeback performance that Joanna had?
Yeah, it was super fun to watch. Obviously, I was rooting for Claudia because she's my coach, and I enjoy her as a person. But if it was a 3-round fight, Claudia would have won. But Joanna stayed calm, stayed cool, and came out with the victory, and it was due to cardio. I think Claudia blew her gas, and at the end, Joanna stayed strong, and obviously showed why she's a champion.
Speaking of Claudia in a moment, she recently had a fight. It was the same day as your fight there in Belfast down in Brazil where she took on Courtney Casey, was able to win, but of course there was that moment there with that illegal kick to the top of Courtney's head. What did you think about the fight? And just as a fellow fighter, were you kind of surprised there wasn't a point taken away from Claudia?
Oh yeah, that was, definitely pretty. I don't know if she knew what she was doing at the time, but it looked very intentional. It didn't look like an accident. If you take a point away, it's a big deal. You have to win you have to win 2 rounds if you get a point taken away. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of taking points away unless someone is badly injured. But definitely something that's kind of unfortunate for Courtney Casey because I'd be pissed if someone kicked my head. I'd be like, all right, we're fighting now. I'm gonna find you in the parking lot.
Now, for Claudia, of course, there's some rumors that she may be taking on Carla Esparza. Just knowing her, do you think that's a fight? And obviously, as a fan of the sport, that you would like to see that matchup, Claudia against Carla. Of course, that was a long build-up fight, even going back to the days of Invicta.
Yeah, that fight would be great to watch. I definitely think Claudia is the more rounded fighter, and she'd win that fight.
Getting to your fight specifically there in Belfast, definitely a 3-round war you had with Anna Elmose. She was coming into this fight, her first fight at 115. She had previously fought in the UFC at bantamweight. Did that worry you at all that she had fought, 2 weight classes above previously?
No, I didn't. Just because I used to do that. I fought at 135 as an amateur in the beginning because I didn't know how to cut weight. And then when I learned, I fought at 125, and then I realized that that's not even the weight for me, and I dropped down to 115. So I actually thought she was lazy for not doing it before, and I had the upper edge because I made the cut months and years ago, and I've already been used to my weight. I'm used to how to cut, how to feel, how to strike, how to move. And she was because I've done that before, I knew how she should be feeling. She'd be nervous for the weight cut. She'd be obviously happy when she made it. But no, I wasn't. She's still a 115-pound girl. She's still the same height as me, the same size. So I wasn't nervous about her jumping from down to a weight class because, like I said, I knew she'd be tough. She's used to 135 girls hitting her in the face, and now she's got 115. So exactly what I had to do in the past. So I wasn't too nervous about that.
Now, she had that early knockdown of you there early in the first round, and then she kind of cut you open a little bit. Did that cut or hit really bother you at all moving forward with the rest of the fight?
No, not at all. I've been dropped 2 times in my career, and it's always because I try to kick the leg. And every time I go to kick the leg, I'm off balance, and I blast you in the face, and I hit the ground. So I knew my coaches were going to be pissed. As soon as I hit the ground, my coaches are going to be pissed because he keeps telling me not to kick. And the cut, I've had that cut open up before. It's the 4th time it's done it, so it's the same spot. I'm kind of used to it by now. Every time I get hit in it, it just opens up.
Now, coming into the second round, you knew you probably dropped that first round due to the knockdown. Rounds 2 and 3, you came out really strong, and you really attacked her, especially with the takedowns. Was that your strategy coming in, or was that something you kind of changed on the fly heading into round 2?
No, actually, also training, I didn't really have a specific, I didn't feel like she was dangerous anywhere. Pretty good at everything. So I didn't feel like I had to take her down or I had to stay standing. I know I didn't want her to take me down. In the judges' eyes, I'm like, I don't really want her to take me down and then edge out a round. So I decided, I was going to kind of play that role. I think I was a better striker. And then, towards the end of the third round, my coaches were screaming at me to get the takedown just to secure the victory of the round. And it was pretty easy. I had fun the whole fight. I didn't have to stress about anything. I just kind of got to play my own game and do what I wanted, and that was the best part of the fight.
When the fight went to the decision, were you pretty confident that you had locked up rounds 2 and 3 to win 29-28, or did you think there was any sort of weird speculation that maybe somehow the judges would give her the nod?
No, I was pretty confident that it was all mine.
In this fight, what do you feel was your biggest negative, even though it was a winning performance?
That was the first time out of 16 fights I've had that I won in a decision. I've never won in a decision. So I think that's what disappoints me the most. But I know she's tough. I know, people told me before it's hard to finish her, which, obviously she was beating her first UFC fight by a body shot. But I think I didn't fight. I fought well. I did what I had to do to win, but that doesn't impress me, and it definitely doesn't impress the fans or Dana White or anything. I wish I would have. After my fight, I wasn't even that tired. I was like, oh, I worked harder. I worked for the takedown at the end, and I tried to finish it at the end. But I wish I would have put a higher pace and really more combos and try to make a finish earlier in the fight.
Well, to your credit, you did throw 213 strikes in 15 minutes. So I would say that's a pretty good pace if you think that you could even up it anymore.
Yeah, I definitely think I should. I know I keep, I'm always thinking 5 minutes, and if I don't want to get taken down or clinched up, I'm like stick and move, from all my boxing. I'm like, get the punches, get out, get the punches, get out. But I was only landing 2 or 3 shots at a time, and, if I really want to make it to the next level and get better, I need to be landing 4 or 5 and get out.
Now, of course, this fight was in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I'm pretty sure this is the farthest you've ever had to fly for a fight. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
How did that affect you at all, if at any?
It was awesome. I went a few days, obviously days early just to get used to the time difference. And I don't think I got used to the time difference till the night of my fight. Every night I couldn't sleep. I didn't fall asleep till 5 a.m. their time, and I had a hard time, and especially the night of the weight cut because I was so dehydrated and thirsty. But after the weight cut and the night before my fight, I actually went to bed and slept all through the night, which was really exciting because I was getting nervous about not getting any sleep before the night of my fight. But it worked out well. I got to travel and explore and see different parts of the world, and that's another reason why I do what I do.
Now, of course, you were lucky enough to have your fight before Thanksgiving, so I'm sure Thanksgiving was pretty nice that you were actually able to chow down and not have to worry about weight, right?
Oh, you would think, yeah. I was like super excited about the time frame, but I'm so, for months and months I don't eat any sugar, any carbs, any bad stuff. And when I ate my Thanksgiving dinner, I like maybe 4 minutes into it, I started feeling so sick. My stomach was upset all day. And then, by the time I started feeling better, it was nighttime again, and I wanted to eat again, and I tried to eat again, and after I eat, my stomach's very small. I can't push too much in it. So it was a good thing, but also a bad thing. I know it makes me not eat as much, but my stomach was feeling pretty upset all day.
Now, of course, much like myself, you are a Michigan native, and on Thanksgiving, most of here in Michigan watched the Detroit Lions, and for once, they actually
Oh,
played
yeah.
well and won. So, what did you
I
think
can't
about
believe it.
the game there for the Lions?
Yeah, I mean it's a good thing when we're in Michigan and the Lions win on Thanksgiving. I'm used to them losing, so I don't it's not even a big deal to me anymore. But it is something nice to ever I feel like it's like a tradition. You watch the game and eat food. That's what our family does. Take naps on the ground while you're watching it. So it's nice for them to get a win finally.
Now, of course, with Christmas and New Year's coming up, do you have any special plans that you usually do during the holiday season, Amanda?
No, I just more time with my family. I always stay the night at my dad's on Christmas Eve and wake up and have breakfast with the family and gift exchange and go see all over my family and just family time. We have traditions. I always watch the same movies for Christmas with my family and just I love the holidays. It's a great time.
What's on the top of your Christmas list this year?
Half of my Christmas list. Oh gosh. I don't know. Everything I want. That's what my mom was asking me yesterday. What do you want for Christmas? I'm like, everything I want, I just buy. I just moved into a house. Actually, like the day I got back from Ireland. So I'm like having to buy everything and get situated, and I just spent way too much money on furniture, TVs, Xbox.
Now, of course, your fight was only about 10 days ago, and you're obviously still recovering and everything, but how quickly can we see you back in the octagon?
Oh, hopefully soon. I mean, I'm going to the gym tonight. I'm already making plans to improve my game and do what I have to do to get better. So, I hope I want the holidays to go by. I know I'll continue training, but I don't want to, have to stress about having to fight or having to make weight or thinking too much about an opponent right now. I just want to enjoy this month of holidays and um, still train, still get in there, still improve. But like I said, once I get a fight, once I get a girl in my head, that's all I can think about, and it's just a relief right now not to have to think about anyone right now and just enjoy the excitement, enjoy training while I don't have to stress. So I'm okay with a month of relaxation, and then I'd like to get a fight in my head and plan for it.
Now, during the broadcast, the announcers mentioned that you spent some time over in Washington with Juliana Pena's camp leading up to the fight. How much time did you actually spend out there, and is that something that you'll do again for fight camps in the future?
Yeah, I spent I think 2 or 3 weeks there. And I went to Texas before that and spent some time with Montana Stewart and Junior Frey and some other good athletes out there. I enjoy traveling and training and seeing different women and different training methods. So I definitely am someone that wants to travel and get used to. I definitely like to go see Montana again. She's a great wrestler, and they got a good camp over there in Texas. And Julianne is obviously a good friend of mine, and I'll continue to train with her.
She is Amanda Cooper. You can follow her on Twitter at ABCNation115. And Amanda, thanks again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and hope to see you back in the octagon in 2017.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Once again, that was Amanda Cooper right here on Beyond the Cage. You just heard my interview there with Amanda Bobby Cooper, fresh off her victory over Anna Elmose at UFC Fight Night Belfast. And once again, thanks to Amanda for coming on the show and talking about her first UFC victory. into rest of the UFC here. UFC Fight Night 101 happened this past weekend in Melbourne, Australia. 6 fights were shown on the main card on Fox Sports 1, starting in the women's strawweight division with Danielle Taylor taking on Sohee Ham. First round, a lot of circling from Danielle Taylor. She did not do a whole lot in the first round. Ham was really chasing her down, landed that straight left quite a few times in that first round, and I thought really kind of controlled that first round. In rounds 2 and 3, they were very similar. I think Ham, from the constant chasing of Taylor, who was circling almost exclusively for this whole fight, I think really started to tire out a little bit. Despite being kind of a smaller strawweight, she has fought some of her career at 105 pounds. So with that in mind, you think that she would be good to go and her conditioning would be fine. She's fought decisions for most of her career, but she did kind of cede and slow down, especially in round 3, and Taylor kind of figured out how to mix that circling with attacking. I think the second round was really close. There was a late takedown attempt reversal by Ham where she ended up in mount in about the last 15-20 seconds. However, Ham didn't really get a lot of offense off from that position, but still with that position granted to her from the reversal, I thought the judges maybe could have gave her that round. Round 3 was definitely all Taylor. She really upped the pace, and like I said, that's when Ham really seemed to slow down. I think all that chasing around did tire her out, and she was starting to eat some power shots as well as she got outstruck 23-11 in the final frame. That was the biggest striking disparity of any round, as they were within 3 in the previous 2 rounds. Neither fighter achieved a takedown. When it was all said and done, it ended up being a split decision, one judge seeing it 29-28 for Ham, the other 2 judges seeing it 30-27 for Taylor. I was a little surprised to see 2 30-27s for Taylor. I didn't think either fighter won this fight 30-27. I probably would have scored it 29-28 Taylor. I think that probably was the correct score. So surprised to see 2 judges scoring at 30-27. However, it wasn't the greatest performance by either fighter. Either fighter shouldn't really hold their head too high after this performance. Credit to Taylor, only her second ever UFC fight, taking on another really tough girl, having to fly halfway around the world to do so. I think was overall a lot still better than her last performance when she took on Marina Moroz. So from that standpoint, it was better, but still, still not a great performance. It's still Danielle Taylor's going to have to work on her offense a little bit if she looks to compete with some of the upper echelon girls in this division. For Ham, I don't know. She kind of got tired out. I don't know if it was there was a couple eye pokes in this fight that she took. I don't know how much those affected her, but not the best we've even seen Sohee Ham inside the octagon. So, they kind of mentioned during the broadcast, she's more of a natural 105er. I wouldn't be surprised maybe they have her move down to Invicta's 105 division. Maybe she would be more suited for that at the time being. Next fight of the evening was in the light heavyweight division as Tyson Pedro took on Khalil Roundtree. Pretty awesome fight for all 4 minutes it lasted. Roundtree, known for his big, powerful strikes, was able to land one of those right hands pretty early against Pedro, had Pedro in trouble. Pedro was able to clinch the fight up, eventually work for a takedown not once but twice, eventually was able to get the back and sink at a rear naked choke to get the tap at 407. And really nice comeback here for Tyson Pedro, who I believe was making his UFC debut. Only had 4 professional fights coming into this one against Roundtree, who had served on The Ultimate Fighter. It was only Roundtree's 6th professional fight, but still, I think competing in the house, and obviously the competition he had probably faced was probably a little better than the guys Pedro was taking on. But credit to Pedro for being able to recover and take out a pretty tough guy and a pretty powerful guy, and do so. I believe he's from Australia. Let me double check that here. Not exactly sure. I'm pretty sure he definitely probably had the crowd more on his side, I think, than
Khalil the American. But, good performance by a young kid, taking on a pretty tough competitor. And for Khalil, obviously grappling is his weakness. He's really going to have to work on that because this is so far 2 fights officially in the UFC, this fight and the Ultimate Fighter runner-up, where he has really just been kind of outclassed on the ground. So if he wants to have any sort of career in the UFC, he's going to have to, he'll have to be the greatest at it, but he's going to have to really shore that up because right now it's definitely the weakest point of his game, and guys are going to constantly attack that if he can't figure out how to keep the fight standing. Next fight of the evening, Alexander Volkanovski against Yusuke Kasai. Just pretty dominant performance here by Alexander, really, as Kasua did have some good submission attempts in this fight, but the one thing about MMA is it's not a jiu-jitsu fight, and sometimes some holds that are really good in jiu-jitsu that you can kind of work and stuff, you can't really do in MMA, especially when you have a guy that is obviously showing that he has really good ground and pound. And I think a couple times Kasue went for leg locks and submissions that really left his head and body open when he kind of already had some sames of damage. They weren't really the greatest time to go for it, and eventually at the end, that's how he got the finish. Kasui just tried to get a heel hook and then was just taking shots to the face and had nothing to protect it there, and the referee had to stop this one at 2:06 into the second round. And I think this is a case of Kasui maybe being too comfortable off his back, working for submissions, because when a guy's punching you in the face, you got to do that first. Go for submission second. You got to control damage, then work for submissions. And Yusuke really wasn't able to do that in this matchup. And credit to Volkanovski for, one, not getting too caught up in the submission defense and seeing opportunities to do damage whenever he could. And he took full advantage of those openings that Kasuya gave him. And no surprise that he was able to get the finish victory there. Omari Akhmedov against Kyle Noke. This was a pretty lackluster performance by Kyle Noke, in my opinion. Omari landed the big shot there in the first, got the takedown, and then in round 2, after kind of beating up Noke on the ground around, you could arguably call 10-8. He took him down again, pounded him some more. In round 3, Noke had to know he had to go for it. And in my opinion, Omari probably winded a little bit. He's a really big guy for this weight class. Did take him down. Only 20 strikes landed between them. I didn't see any urgency from Noke. It seemed like he was just trying to win the round, and even if you give him that round, he still loses 29-28. Fighting in front of his home country, a veteran like this, I don't know. It was a very lackluster performance overall, but that third round, he knows he has to go for it. You lost the first 2 rounds. There's no doubt about that. And it just seemed like there was no sense of urgency from Kyle Noke. And from that standpoint, it has to be disappointing. This is a guy who's been around the game for a while. You would think he knows that he probably was going to lose this fight. He has now lost 3 fights in a row, all of them coming inside of this year, after having a pretty good 2015 where he won 2 consecutive fights, including a performance of the night bonus win over Peter Sabata. Has since lost a decision to Alex Moreno, got submitted by Kita Nakamura, and now losing to Akhmedov. I don't know. This is a guy that's 36 years old, has lost 3 in a row. He's been in the UFC since 2010. I don't know if there's really much left in the tank for Kyle Noke. If fighting in your home country down 2 rounds to none doesn't surge you to try to get a finish victory, I don't know what will, because you got to go. You got 5 minutes to go. Greg Jackson even they said in his corner with Hardy and Aiken on the call, give me 5 minutes of hell. That was not it to me. That was not 5 minutes of hell anywhere. So for Kyle Noke, he's really going to have to take a look in the mirror if this is still what he wants to do with his life, because looking at that last 5 minutes, like I said, after getting dominated the last 10, didn't seem like a guy that really wanted to win the fight. Just he wanted to get through the next 5 minutes. Co-main event of the evening, Andrew Holbrook against Jake Matthews. First round was pretty good. Close round, but Andrew Holbrook did outstrike the Celtic Kid 36-10. was able to land 2 takedowns in this fight. Matthews did have some top control. The next 2 rounds were pretty close. I think round 2, you could have made a case for Matthews. There were some submission attempts there by Holbrook. Round 3, Matthews once again initiated the clinch, maybe not to his better standards. He did land some nice shots in the feet in this fight. I think one of the reasons why he landed a really nice inside leg kick in round 1, and it seemed like that may have started foot swelling, and they mentioned in between rounds 1 and 2 when they came back from break that Matthews said his foot wasn't feeling well, and I don't know if that hurt foot kept him from wanting to stand up. He figured if he went to the ground, he wouldn't have to, be on his feet much and put pressure on it. But kind of went into what Holbrook does best. And Holbrook really, I thought, showed a very good guard and threw up a lot of submission attempts, was attacking from the bottom. And for Matthews, there were opportunities to land ground and pound on some of the holds that Holbrook was throwing, if you go back to the Volkanovski fight. But Matthews wasn't taking them. He seemed like he just wanted to be on top, maybe get a submission, but Holbrook kept attacking. And for Matthews, I don't know how much it was the foot or how much he just thought he could win by taking Holbrook down, but overall, he missed a lot of opportunities for damage. He was taking him down good. I mean, he was 3 of 3 on his takedowns. Before the foot injury, I thought he was doing well in stand-up, and I think this is a fight that if Jake Matthews looks back, he either had to, 1, do more damage, or 2, just forget about the pain and try to push through it and stand up and maybe avoid the guard of Holbrook, because he seemed pretty comfortable down there, and because Matthews wasn't doing a lot of damage, he could really work for a lot of those, locks and stuff, and sure, none of them really panned out, but just going for them and attacking from the bottom with strikes as well is what gave Holbrook this fight. And it's, much to the chagrin of the crowd there in Australia, of course, rooting for their hometown guy in Matthews, but I thought Holbrook, kind of being an underdog a little bit, going into enemy territory, being in the co-main event, this only his, 3rd professional UFC fight, and especially coming off a first-round knockout loss, definitely, was the underdog, and I thought he performed admirably. And this is another, young guy in the division. He's a big guy, 5'11", for the lightweight weight class, but I think if he kind of can work some striking a little bit, get a little better at that. Obviously, Chris Lytle is his coach, who was a fantastic striker in his own right, not just in boxing, but obviously in the UFC as well. He can develop into a very formidable foe. And for Jake Matthews, obviously the foot is something he has to look at, but in this fight he has to look at how much did that foot affect him, and 2, how smart was it to really kind of go into that guard. Was that strategy, or was that, desperation, not wanting to have his stay on your foot? So, I think Jake Matthews, again, only 22 years old, he still has a lot of potential, and I think by no means did we see the last of him. But he's going to kind of have to regroup a little bit. He got knocked out in the first round by Kevin Lee back in July, and now, losing this fight here, really, to me, just with little things. If he would have went for damage on the ground in a lot of those positions, it could have turned the fight into his favor, but he didn't, and no surprise, he got the loss. Robert Whittaker versus Derek Brunson, fight of the night and performance of the night bonus for Australia's own Robert Whittaker. Interesting fight as Brunson really was pushing the pace early, really getting up close to Robert Whittaker, landed a lot of good power combinations, tried a couple takedowns. Wasn't able to get that, but the striking was working for him. But even though he was hurting Whittaker, he was rocking him a little bit. He definitely had him on the ropes a little bit there. One thing I was noticing is that I thought Brunson was really trying too hard for the knockout. If you kind of go back and watch the tape, he's really leaning in forward with his head with these strikes. He's kind of leading with his head and kind of running forward with these punches. They're not short, crisp, accurate punches. His head isn't back. There was little head movement, and it's kind of no surprise that. And then he started to slow down too. He kind of was over punching. All these punches were, home run shots. There were no, single or double swings in there. And I think kind of getting tired and maybe getting desperate thinking, oh, I can finish this if I just keep going hard, kind of went against him there. And it just took a short left counter hook because Brunson was coming in too far forward with his head. Whitaker caught him. That started the beginning of his end. Then Whitaker threw that head kick, and that was really what ended the fight there. The head kick wobbled him, a couple more punches, and then the referee had to come in and stop this one at 4:07 into the first round for Robert Whitaker to win by knockout. Big victory. Obviously, Derek Brunson was on a huge roll coming into this fight, and Whitaker was able to take him out, go through adversity, and now notch his his sixth consecutive victory. He has now beaten 3 fighters that have been in the top 15 at the time of the fight, in Uriah Hall, Rafael Natal, and Derek Brunson. And he has, in this 6-fight winning streak, he has 4 finishes over Clint Hester, Brad Tavares, and now Derek Brunson. Three finishes in his last 6 fights. And now may put himself possibly 1 fight away from a title shot. Luke Rockhold has recently called out Gegard Mousasi, would like to fight Gegard in March. If that is indeed on the table, that may leave Whitaker to face Jacare, possibly for a number 1 contender spot. With obviously Yoel Romero is going to be fighting Michael Bisping. Jacare is kind of out there now. I don't know if they're going to try to rebook Jacare and Rockhold, which again was supposed to be the main event of this night here in Melbourne, Australia. But Whitaker definitely puts himself in a good position. And, Brunson, I don't think he falls too far behind, but really it's just a thing where he kind of has to learn not to rush too much. There's a lot of powerful guys, especially in a guy like Robert Whitaker, who has a lot of power in his hands, known for striking. And I think you could still rush in, but just don't kind of lead your head forward. If he kind of changes his head position a little bit, kind of strikes back a little bit, you can still throw power punches and finish guys. And I think that's obviously the biggest takeaway to me for this fight was Derek Brunson definitely made a tactical error. And, he was getting away with it early, but eventually Whitaker was able to weather the storm and land the counter right on the button. Of course, the UFC has the Ultimate Fighter 24 finale coming up. The full main card has yet to be announced at time of recording of this episode. Of course, we already know Henry Cejudo and Joseph Benavidez will do battle as the 2 coaches of the season. Of course, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson will face the winner of this season, the Ultimate Fighter, which will happen on Wednesday. That will either be Tim Elliott or Hero. And honestly, I don't know. I think it's probably going to be Tim Elliott. I think Hero has a good chance of winning, but I'd probably go with Tim Elliott. He's a little more kind of wild and crazy. Hero's a lot more of a one-dimensional fighter. So my pick would be Tim Elliott. We may see Tim Elliott against Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson in the main event. There's a lot of good other fights on the card as well, so I think it's actually going to be a really solid card there for Las Vegas coming up this weekend. But I'll probably do a separate video for that. And getting to some other UFC news and notes, of course, Conor McGregor has now been stripped or relinquished. I'm not sure however you want to phrase that, but he is no longer the featherweight champion of the world. Interim champion Jose Aldo, of course, former featherweight champion as well. He has now been promoted back to that status of being the featherweight champion and going to UFC 206, which will be in about 2 weeks. The new main event is now Anthony Pettis against Max Holloway, as Daniel Cormier has once again had to pull out of a fight due to a knee injury, so his fight against Rumble Johnson will not happen at UFC 206. And now Max Holloway and Anthony Pettis will be the main event, and that will now be for the interim featherweight championship. So the winner of that fight will face Jose Aldo to become the undisputed featherweight champion of the world at some point in 2017. And Conor relinquishing the titles, obviously he said he wanted to defend both, but I think most fans and media felt it was only a matter of time before he dropped the 145 title. I don't think he had a lot of desire to go back down, 1, for the weight cut, and 2, because he had already beaten a lot of the top guys, and I think because he beat Aldo the way he did, and I think because how many times, they basically had to make, it would have been like the fourth time they would have made that fight, Aldo with the injuries. I just don't think he had any desire to fight Jose Aldo, and I don't think the UFC really wanted to book Aldo against McGregor again. And it's unfortunate for Aldo because almost in any other circumstance, a champion losing like that, especially considering how many defenses he had, even go back to his days when he was the WEC featherweight champion, probably would have been granted an immediate rematch or a rematch with after one more victory, especially being a guy the caliber of Frankie Edgar. So I think just because of the injuries and that he's had, not just in the McGregor hype building those fights, but just overall he's had to pull out quite a few fights in his career. And of course one of the cancellations that he had led to a cancellation of a whole event. So yeah, that in as well. Whether that's justified or not, that's kind of how the UFC looks at it. And so it's not too much of a surprise that Conor's not really wanting to fight at 45. Now, maybe if Pettis wins, maybe there's a super fight, Pettis moving up and trying to accomplish what Conor did, being a simultaneous champion. That is realistic. But he just probably didn't want to cut the weight more. And honestly, there's a lot of good fights for him at 155 pounds, to be honest. I mean, between Khabib and Tony Ferguson and RDA and a lot of the other really good guys in this division, there's a lot of fights to keep him busy. Obviously, there's probably going to be a trilogy fight with Nate Diaz at some point in time, too. So there's a lot of fights that Conor has, and really he has no shortage of suitors in the division. So the UFC, in an attempt to save the pay-per-view, did what they could, really. And timing-wise, it probably worked out. I mean, they probably weren't going to announce the stripping or vacation of the title and giving Aldo the title if this injury happens, maybe that soon. It probably would have happened before the end of the year, but it just kind of worked out timing-wise. I think that everybody knew it was coming at some point. We were just waiting for when, and this kind of happened. Also, Rashad Evans, who was supposed to fight Tim Kennedy at UFC 205, that got scrapped, then they moved it to 206, and it looks as though there may be some brain damage issues with the former UFC champion and Ultimate Fighter winner, and his career is definitely in question. So he's off the books, and Kelvin Gastelum, who was supposed to fight at 205, actually against Cowboy Cerrone, has now been permanently relegated, at least until further notice, and I think probably maybe for the rest at least of his UFC career, to the middleweight division. So he steps up to fight Tim Kennedy at UFC 206. That will still be on the card, along with Cowboy Cerrone against Matt Brown. So those will be the main three fights there for UFC 206, as Anthony Pettis looks to become a two-division champion, even though it's interim, so a little bit of a asterisk, but could become, we could see in 1 year 2 fighters win a title in 2 different weight classes, albeit an interim for Pettis, but still. And obviously Max Holloway will not be denied a title shot if he beats Anthony Pettis by becoming the interim champion. So that's really cool because Holloway has been on just as good a streak as anybody in the UFC over the last 2 years. So exciting to see that, and it should be a pretty exciting main event as well. Although I am disappointed to see DC and Rumble not happen again. Hopefully that can get booked as soon as possible, because that is a fight I really wanted to see run back, because I felt Rumble just kind of overextended himself, and I think has learned a lot since that first meeting with Daniel Cormier. Getting to Bellator now. Bellator, for the first time since I can remember, they're going to run 2 events in 2 days, starting first with Bellator 166, which will be at the WinStar Royal Casino there in Oklahoma, and then followed by Bellator 167, which will be the following night in the very same venue. So the fans there in Oklahoma are going to be treated to a very nice double dip of action there, with a lot of the top bantamweights being on display. Looking at first Bellator 166, of course the bantamweight championship will be decided, as Eduardo Dantes will rematch Joe Warren. Joe Warren, in my opinion, probably should have retired after the Darren Caldwell fight. However, did come back at Bellator 161 was able to get a victory over Sirwan Kakai, if I said that correctly, to get his first victory of the year. Now at 40 years old, looking to what could be his last fight and possibly retire as Bellator champion, as he was the featherweight champion. This would be his second championship in the bantamweight if he won, taking on Eduardo Dantes, who was able to. This is his second matchup here against Joe Warren. Warren obviously won a very close decision victory over Eduardo Dantes. That was back at Bellator 128. Since that point in time, 2 straight victories for Dantes, being the likes of Mike Richmond, and then defeating Marcus Galvo in an absolute dominant performance over 25 minutes. So in this matchup, I really got to favor Eduardo Dantes. I think Joe Warren, especially after getting submitted by Marcus Galvo, even if he takes down Dantes, I think Dantes is going to be ready for it. I think his takedown defense has proved. His striking is obviously way better. And just the way he dominated Galvo for 25 minutes, I think with Joe Warren and his pace and his age, I don't know if he can handle this fight if it goes past the 3rd round. I mean, he definitely is a guy that is all heart. He definitely has skill, but puts a lot of heart, effort, and grit into his performance, and I'm not sure at this point in time that he can really contend with a guy, who's as young and fast, as strong, and as big at this weight class that is Eduardo Dantes. So, we'll see how Joe Warren fares, but I would look for another dominant performance here by Eduardo Dantes. Also on the card here for a 166 featherweight prospect, AJ McKee will probably take on his toughest test to date as he takes on Emmanuel Sanchez, who has been on a really nice roll since joining Bellator in 2014, as he has compiled a 5-2 record, only losing to some of the top guys in the featherweight division, and Pat Curran and Daniel Weichel. He also holds victories over Daniel Pineda and Justin Lawrence as well. This is a guy that definitely has really improved since that, for many, really seeing him for the first time against Pat Curran back at Bellator 139 has really improved since that point in time in about the last 18 months, and has really become one of Bellator's best competitors in any division. And AJ McKee, obviously this young kid has a lot of potential, just 21 years old, has finished all professional fights, all of his fights, professional fights, coming inside a Bellator, and his last one, maybe his most impressive to date, as he was able to submit Cody Walker in just 32 seconds, a guy that has not even seen the second round. He's definitely going to be tested against Emmanuel Sanchez, and if McKee can get by a guy like Sanchez, he probably only puts himself maybe one fight away from a featherweight title shot, and featherweight arguably the best division for Bellator, so that's going to be a really exciting fight at 166 to see if McKee is kind of ready for the next level of competition. Also, speaking of bantamweights, Marcus Galvo, the former champion, will take on LC Davis. This one definitely has some title implications on the line, as Davis was very close to a title shot after winning 3 consecutive bouts in Bellator and having that absolute war with Hideo Takoro back at Bellator 145. Kind of fell short and had a very disappointing performance against Joe Warren at Bellator 143. Has not fought since that point in time, so nearly a little over a year since LC Davis has stepped in the Bellator cage. So we'll see what adjustments he has made since that, taking on Marcus Galvo, who, of course, his last fight was just getting absolutely dominated by Eduardo Dantes, and it just never seemed like Galvo got in the rhythm. So we'll see how hungry he comes out to try to recapture his championship after that very lackluster performance in his last fight. Also, Chris Honeycutt taking on Ben Reeder. That should be a pretty solid fight as well, and I think that probably will round out the main card. I'm not sure if they'll throw another fight in there. So that's Bellator 166 heading into Bellator 167. They're going to run this one back. Joe Ty Manglo against Darian Caldwell. Of course, as fans may know, Ty Manglo actually beat Darian Caldwell, the first loss of Caldwell's career, in their last fight, which was also a main event. However, because Ty Manglo missed weight, Bellator did not want to give Baby Joe the title shot that he was the winner of that fight was supposed to have earned. So, and he added the fact that Caldwell was pretty much dominating this whole fight up until he kind of got a little lazy there in the third round, kind of left his head in the takedown position too long, and Ty Manglo was able to lock up a guillotine choke and get the tap just 9 seconds into the third round. So I think kind of all that added in, they're going to run this one back, and the winner will, this time, absolutely get a shot at the Bellator championship. And for Caldwell, really, he's just got to do the same thing he did last time. He just can't get lazy. He's got to focus on a full 15 minutes, or he's just got to do more work and put him away quicker to not allow Joe to have that type of ability to come back and take the fight away from him. So I think Caldwell, his first loss, I think he's going to be motivated. I think he's going to come out, and I really think he's going to win. I think Ty Manglo really, even if it stays standing, I'm not just really sure. I mean, he's just so much smaller than Darian. I mean, Darian's 5'10" at this weight class. He's an absolute monster. And you look at Ty Manglo, who's 5'4", missed weight even. I'm not saying he doesn't have skills, but it's going to be very hard, even in this rematch, and knowing that he can obviously submit Caldwell. I still think it's going to be down there, and you got to add in the pressure of weight. Once again, he's got to beat the scale first, and that's something Caldwell's never really had to worry about. So, he's got to defeat the scale first, and then he's got to go try to beat Darren Caldwell again, and good luck with that. Also on the fight, the very hyped Elmose McFarlane will take on Emily Ducati, as Ducati had a very good victory in her last fight with a very nice submission armbar over Kenya Da Silva, and had another finish in her first ever Bellator fight over Bruna Vargas back at Bellator 159. So she's 2-0 in Bellator, 4-1 overall in her career, taking on McFarlane, who had a excellent Bellator fight in her last effort at Bellator 157, defeating the much hype and hometown favorite there in Rebecca Ruth, submitting her in the second round. And despite being the smaller girl in the fight, just really attacked Ruth and really never let Ruth breathe. And she's compiled a very nice record, 4-0 overall in her career, 3-0 in Bellator, finishing her last two fights. She has 3 of her 4 victories by finish. And Ducati has 2 submission victories of her 4 finishes. McFarlane, 26 years old, 23 is Ducati. You're very excited for this fight. I think this obviously could lead to kind of maybe a title eliminator of sorts for Bellator's flyweight division, which of course is growing, and I think eventually they'll probably crown a champion at some point. But the winner of this fight could really factor in to a possible championship crowning sometime in 2017. Also, Chide Njokuani will take on Andre Fiallo. That should be a really good fight. Justin Lawrence returns to the Bellator cage. Always excited to see the American kid and former Ultimate Fighter contestant return. He'll be taking on John Teixeira de Cansayo, who's 20-1 in his career. He has not lost since 2012, and that was actually in the UFC to Hugo Viana. I think that was on the Ultimate Fighter Brazil that season. This guy's established a really good record. So far has been 4-0 in the 3-0 in Bellator. Has not fought for Bellator since September of last year, and hasn't fought overall since December of last year when he fought at Eco Fight 17. That was back in December last year. So we'll see how he fares against Justin Lawrence, who, of course, had a lot of hype behind him after becoming the RFA featherweight champion. Had fought 3 times in the UFC, compiled a 1-2 record, was really young, went to RFA, performed very well. So far in Bellator, 2-1. He was able to come back and have a very nice victory after his close loss to Emmanuel Sanchez at Dynamite early this year, knocking out Asao Kobayashi in the second round at the 240 mile mark. We'll see if Justin Lawrence can continue, as he is a guy that definitely can factor in the featherweight division, and taking out a guy like John Teixeira would definitely be a nice feather in his cap. And if Teixeira can, after not fighting in Bellator for a year, can beat a guy the caliber of Justin Lawrence, like I said, this featherweight division is very stacked. that can definitely help him moving forward as well. Not sure what other fights they may show here on the main card. That'll probably be the 4-fight main card if I had to guess. Also, Brandon Phillips is fighting on the card too. But 2 solid cards for Bellator. Obviously the first one being the championship fight is going to have a little more glamour to it, especially with a guy like Dantes, who's one of the best in the world at 135 pounds. So I think this is cool for Bellator to do. I kind of wish it was in either 2 separate cities. No offense to the fans in Oklahoma there, but why do they get 2 fights in a row is, I guess, what I'm saying. So this may be something they could have mixed some kickboxing in, with one of the events. I think they could have maybe hyped it up a little more. I don't know. But it's pretty cool that they're trying the 2 fights in one days, and I commend them, and I'll definitely be watching both cards, and I'm looking forward to some great action both Friday and Saturday in the Bellator cage. Once again, I'd like to thank Amanda Cooper for coming on to the program this afternoon. Also like to thank my partners at MMAFightClub.net, the MMACommunity.com, SportsTalk313.com, some Twitter accounts that help me out every day in Flying Brian J, Izzy Garcia, Talk MMA, Legends of the Cage, AJ Hiller, and of course running MMASignaturesUSA.com, Gorilla the Bear, my great friend and MMA-inspired artist as well, and of course TopRatedMMA.com too, with a portion of their proceeds going to help the United Heroes Fund, which help U.S. Armed Forces veterans, or Higher Heroes Fund, I should say, to help men and women from the U.S. Armed Forces find jobs here in America. So I'd like to thank all of them for supporting Beyond the Cage each and every week. And of course, I'm your host, Jim Graham. You can follow me on Twitter at Jim Graham, and I'm also on Instagram at the Jim Graham. So until next week, thank you for listening to another edition of Beyond the Cage.